Hello, we're back. Undisputed Boxing with Rick and Ave. We are here to review last night's action. Matchroom, Conor Benn and Sebastian Formella headlining. Alan Babic, the Savage, versus Tom Little, and Fabio Wardley against Richard Lartey. Rick, what did you make of the card?
I actually really enjoyed it for a Saturday night fight night. It was good. The quality wasn't obviously world class, but it doesn't always have to be as long as it's entertaining. So saw all those three that you mentioned. So probably start from Babic and Little. It was hard to know what to expect for this one because Little's not the best. But he's had good notice for this fight. I think he's been training for 8 weeks, came in a lot lighter, and he's not useless. And probably, maybe not on paper, the best fighter Babic has fought, but you know, up there.
Yeah.
And I just thought that he might come in and keep away from him a bit and drag Babic into the later rounds, and then we see more what Babic has got. But he seemed to get rocked early, and those throwing back a bit, he just seemed to wilt by the third round, and semi looked for a way out, really. I mean, at one stage it was quite fun in the first round because Babic was throwing, and Tom Little was like shouting, "Come on, Babic! Come on, Babic!" And I thought, actually, this is his game plan. Wind him up, tire him out. But he seemed to just get tired from all the body shots, perhaps. So, a bit disappointed in Little more than I was over impressed with Babic. It was the same again, really, but it was great. It was good entertainment. Entertainment. What do you make of that one?
Yeah, I mean, the same. I mean, I think there was a lot of build leading up to it, I think, saying that it's a 50-50 fight. I really didn't see it as a 50-50 fight. And I think if you're trying to build somebody and you're comparing them to Tom Little as a 50-50, then, it kind of begs the question, how far do you expect them to go? But I mean, it was a fun fight. And I think he's one of those that you'd always look forward to watching. Is he going to get to, top 5, top 8? Most probably not. He's probably started a little bit too late, but, really, wild but entertaining. And, he's always going to be in a fun fight. And I can see him having one of those kind of careers where he'll probably notch maybe, 5, 6, 7 losses over the next, sort of 4 or 5 years, but he'll still be very kind of marketable. And I mean, it would be a nightmare to matchmake for, because he looks a real handful, especially for those first, 2 or 3 rounds. But I was pretty impressed, and I think it'd be great to see him fight that Filip Hrgović. I think there's talk of that potentially as early as next year. But I think that they're going to have a real hard job trying to find an opponent for him for next. And I think he definitely needs a step up. And I think somebody like a Kevin Johnson, or somebody who's got some really good ring craft that can take him into those later rounds. Maybe a Christian Hammer, or somebody who's a bit of a wily old fox that can just see what he's got in those later rounds, and see if he can keep that intensity up. Because I very much doubt he'd be able to keep that intensity up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hearn knows what he's got with him. I think he knows he's not going to get into like the top 10 of the world, and not everyone's going to. And you don't, I suppose, in your stable, you need a bit of everything. You need someone who's talented and probably always going to be on the undercard, but is also entertaining, but not kind of top level. And I think that's where he'll be. He'll kind of slot in there, and he'll be. I mean, he's fought more than anyone during lockdown, during the pandemic. That's his 3rd fight since August.
Yeah.
So he's been very active. So he's almost a bit of a card filler. If you're a bit weak undercard, we'll throw Babic in, kind of thing. I think you're right. You want someone. I think Johnson's a good one. I mean, I don't think they would have done this, but Price would have been an interesting one, because though Price is a far better boxer, he's not great under fire. So that would have been interesting to see how that would go, but I can't see that coming off. I think the Hrgović fight's there, but I think it's 2 fights down. I mean, he's already going to be on the card for the 30th. I think it's the 31st of Jan, or White Povetkin 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he may have another 2 more fights, and maybe a big fight with Hrgović in the summer. But I'll be honest, I think he'll get cleaned out. It's delicate because I think they know that he's one-dimensional, and if they go too far with him, he's going to get found out. And they almost want to push. They almost want to give him 2 more fights, which they can say, "Oh, he's progressing, and it's showing, his levels," without taking too much risk if they want to make some money out of the Hrgovic fight.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a tricky one because as soon as they go too far, like someone like Hammer, I don't know. I think he could get found out there. Hammer's a lot more technical than anyone I've seen him fight.
Who would you pair him with then that would be realistic?
Well, I think Johnson's a good one because I don't think Johnson's going to be a threat to him. And if he doesn't get him out, well, that's not too bad. If he does get him out, it's really good.
Yeah.
So and that he's not going to lose that. So I think that's and again, Kevin Johnson's one of these where if you beat him, it's not a great thing, but if you knock him out, you've got a bit of a star next to you.
Yeah.
So it's a no lose one really, and you could win big from it. Then you'll need another one, and that's where it gets tricky because it's like I would have said actually I'd have liked to see him against. We're going to talk about him, but Lartey. So I expected Wardley to beat Lartey, and I was like, I'd like to see him against Lartey.
Yeah.
But Lartey can't fight now because he's been knocked out.
Yeah.
But maybe he could be his opponent after Johnson, and if he goes in and does that to Lartey, which again would be a bit tricky. Then again, you're saying, well, he's the same level as Wardley and all that. You know what I mean? So those are the two, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, probably somebody that is durable, but isn't going to be kind of too much of a threat. Like maybe, is it Răzvan Cajanu, the Romanian that went the distance with Joseph Parker, and I think he recently fought Dubois, or like an Eric Molina, somebody like that who's actually got a bit of a name, but they're not going to be taking them out anytime soon. They'll maybe take them distance.
Well, Molina's a good one. Molina's a good one, though Molina can bang a little bit. He is over the hill, so it's a bit of a risk, but Hrgovic fought Molina last year. I think it was on the in the Saudi Arabia card.
Yeah.
So that could be instead of Lartey, it could be him.
Yeah.
But I know he often asks for a lot of money, so whether it's realistic, I don't know. But yeah, if he went in swinging against him and got him out around the same time Hrgovic did the year before, you could go. Well, there you go. Interesting, yeah.
And it's great that he's going to be fighting again soon. He's going to be active, so he'll be on the Dillian White Povetkin undercard end of Jan.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about the Wardley Lartey? Yeah. What was your take on that? Bit of a strange fight, I think, in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, Wardley's also going to be on that undercard, so he'll be out again soon. I think he's going to have one more fight on that card, and then he'll be fighting for maybe Gorman for the British title.
Right. Okay. That is interesting. On the
undercard. I don't think that one. I don't think his next fight will be against Gorman.
Right.
I think it'll be the one after that. It'll get called. Now again, that brings Bricktop and Hearn back together again, probably. See what happens there.
What I'm really waiting for is the Hearn and Frank Warren at a press conference. I mean, that for me is going to be box office. That's pay-per-view.
Oh, we'll do a video on that just on its own.
I just don't know if I can see it happening anytime soon. There's a lot of a lot of hate there, isn't there? I think. But don't digress too much. What was your take on Wardley's performance?
Strange, really. The first round, I remember thinking, it could be in a bit of a fight here. He was getting pushed back. Lartey's front foot seemed to be making him a bit nervous. But he is a kind of, he's generally a relaxed person. So I was like, he shouldn't burn too much nervous energy. He's very loose and he's not got a lot of bulk. So but I don't know how. I think he's only been around the distance once, but I don't think he'd been the 10 rounds that this was. The first round I was like, interesting. He's been put on the back foot. And then the second round started more or less the same, and then just seemed to catch him with 2 decent jabs. And I noticed Lartey kind of moved back for the first time, and I just thought, is he trying to bring him on, look for a counter? And then he just threw a right over the top, and didn't seem to be the cleanest connection. And his feet just like someone had pulled his feet away.
Yeah.
And it did look a bit odd to me. And then he was down for a while and he was taking oxygen. So I was like, are we going to see this replay or not? Obviously, Sky don't show the replays until they know someone's, fine.
Yeah.
And then the replay came and he did catch him, but it was a bit of a scuff. But I know up here it can, wobble you. But he was bad for a while, apparently, even in the changing rooms. So yeah, it was a weird one. There's been a bit of social media about him taking a dive and stuff, but I'm like, why, for what? Who's going to pay him to take a dive against Wardley?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think there's always going to be elements of that when it doesn't look quite, because you can kind of see it, but I think on the replay, I think he just sort of catches, like he does catch the guard and the arm, but it kind of goes around and I think it catches him on the temple and just sort of scrambles the brain, and you can see what happened to his legs. He folded like an accordion, didn't he? So
how good do you think Wardley is?
I don't know. I'm not too high on him yet. I think the one good thing about him, he is still quite young. He's 25. And like you say, he's 10 wins now with 9 knockouts. I think 2021 could be an interesting year for him. And I think if he does fight for the British title against Nathan Gorman or something like that, I think that's going to be an interesting test, and we'll see where he's at. But I'm quite excited by him. But I mean, is he? And he's big. He's a big guy as well. He's like 6'6". I think that's one thing that you've always got to be aware of, like new heavyweights that are sort of coming through. If they're kind of 6'2", 6'3", against heavyweights these days, they're just, I don't know, they could be grossly undersized and underweight. But I'm quite excited by him, actually. I think he could be quite interesting. Could be quite dangerous. I don't think there's any need to rush him. But I don't know. You know what it's like with the matchroom fights. It always feels like they get kind of fast tracked, whereas Queensbury and Frank Warren, they like to really kind of take their time with them a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think he's really, really interesting.
Yeah. One to watch, I think. And yeah, I think the fight against Gorman, if that happens, that will be a bit of a yardstick as to where he's at. Gorman's, I mean, the last fight Gorman was against Lartey. He wasn't in a great state physically, so he's got more weight to lose. But if you can beat him, then that's, you can do him in 4. I think Dubois beat him in 4. Again, that's the kind of thing you want to be looking at. If I can knock this guy out and finish him, that propels me, and people will say, oh well, so and so did that, and kind of thing. So yeah.
Just a quick one, just on whilst you've mentioned Dubois, did you see the Dubois, Joe Joyce, BT have doing something similar to The Gloves Are Off, but Sam Jones and Frank Warren were there. Did you see much of it?
I didn't see it all. I've seen bits of it. Part of it's entertaining. Part of it's a bit embarrassing as well. Actually, just, I mean, it seemed to be in some like kind of echoey warehouse or something, and it just seemed to be Sam Jones and Bricktop arguing, and them two must have just been sat there like looking at each other. I don't know. Weird one, but I think if they were going to do it, they had to have those two in, because Dubois and Joyce are not going to. They'll probably. I can't wait for the fight. I think it's going to be a great fight, but I'm not bothered about.
I think it almost doesn't. It doesn't need it. I mean, there's nothing worse than fake beef, and people, they're almost trying to. I get that you've got to sell the fight, but just have a highlight reel or something like that. They don't even need to kind of go too crazy on it. It's a really, really intriguing fight, really good fight. And I just don't think it really needs any of this kind of manufactured beef and, Sam Jones and Frank Warren going at it. They're just, I don't know. It was.
He's annoying as well, Sam Jones as well, isn't he? There's an element of him that's a bit annoying.
Yeah, I think he's one of those characters now that we've got in boxing that kind of never say no to an interview, and you can just see them everywhere. A little bit like Joe Gallagher and Ben Davison. You just see them being interviewed all the time. You're like, okay, you're trainers, come on. But anyway, and then the headline act, Conor Benn versus Sebastian Formella. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, you go first, because I've done the other two first. How did you see it?
Do you know what? I was actually really impressed with Conor Benn, and I was a huge fan of his dad, Nigel Benn. In the early 90s, he was so exciting to watch. And when I heard that, his son was going to be coming into boxing, I was a little bit kind of, huge shoes to fill. And he was a real fan's favorite as well, Nigel Benn. And, in his first few fights, he just looked really, really wild and didn't quite have the sledgehammer punch that his dad had. But he had that kind of like jerky sort of style and didn't really have much of a jab. And I was just like, I really didn't know where this was going to end up. And I did sort of think to myself, maybe this is just going to be a bit of a novelty act. But I have to say, I was really, really impressed. I thought he put his punches together really well. His head movement and his defense was really, really good. He is still pretty wild, but and he's leading in with those left hooks and leading with the right hand as well. And he does still look quite wide open. But Sebastian Formella, I mean, it was a huge step up because I think his last two opponents before Formella, I don't think they were even in the top 100 in the welterweight on BoxRec, and Formella I think is a top 30 fighter, so it was a massive step up and a really good test. Obviously, it was well documented. He went the distance with Sean Porter, and Sean Porter's a big welterweight and punches very hard. So, and I think he pretty much won every round. I think maybe you could give Formella 1 or 2 rounds at the most, and I thought it was a really mature performance. And I actually think it looks like he's starting to fill out a little bit as well. I think he's 24, 25 now. Because I always thought he was a bit too small as a welterweight, but he's actually starting to fill out a little bit. And I think, I think he's a genuine, sort of contender now. And I think that Formella win kind of puts him in between British and European level. I think there's still a lot of questions to be asked, but I was really impressed. Yeah.
I've had a bit of a thick moment. When that first came on, I'm like, why have you got Big Ben in the background? And now I realise. It's like, is he missing England? Much like. Sorry, go on.
No, it's okay.
Much like you, I mean, again, it was this. Formella had been the distance with Porter, and so that's what everyone was saying, really. And I watched a little bit of that fight. I hadn't seen it live, so I watched a little bit, and it was what I got the flavour that he's very durable. He can look after himself, but he's not at world kind of level, this guy. But I thought I thought Ben would have a few more ropey moments than what he had. I think he went a bit wayward middle part of the fight. I think he sensed he was weakening and he went in for it. And I think that's something he's got to work on. He goes from quite controlled into quite loose and open and wild very quickly. And it's about staying composed when he's going for it. But yeah, I was impressed. I mean, you can't knock it, what he's done, and I think his punch selection was like something that impressed me. He was working head, body, everything was in there. I mean, halfway through, I think he's thrown every single punch other than an uppercuts. And then he started seeming to throw a load of uppercuts, in the second half of the fight. Yeah. So, he banged the guy up a lot. It'd be interesting to see what he thought, what Formella thought compared to, Porter. And you're right, he is filling out a bit more. And his jab looks really good. And it comes like quite low up, really speedy, snapping the guy's head back. And I think he's in that, it's a real stacked division. And I think I'd go as far to say is if you put him in with anybody in that division, he'd be a bit of a handful. I don't back him to beat any of the top ones at the moment, but I think he'd be a bit of a handful. I think they'd struggle with him to start with because he's just so quick.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a long way to go till he actually fights any of those. Probably 2 years away, really. I think one thing that annoyed me a little bit, annoys like a strong word, but I think I saw some interviews with him before the fight, then after the fight. And I don't know, I get the feeling he's starting to, me, I don't like people being over false.
Yeah.
And I just think he's play acting now a little bit, and he's trying to he's playing up to his dad's, his dad had that kind of mean streak in him kind of thing. Yeah. And he's almost overdoing that a little bit. And I don't know if he's being false, that's how he generally thinks, but I just think he could have just said that after that, listen, just, good performance, I'm ready for high levels. I want Kelly. You know what I mean? He seems to make an over point about it, and he seems to be a bit, I don't know. But you have to do that a bit, don't you, for to get a name in boxing. But to be fair, he's got a name. So
yeah, I do. I get what you're saying, and this actually brings an interesting point about, because a lot has been made just recently, and we'll probably cover this in another video. But there's a stark contrast between Teofimo Lopez, who has been building himself up and trash talking a little bit, and he's been actually promoting himself, as well as Bob Arum, and Terence Crawford just hasn't. He's just been, I'll go in there, I'll do the business, you promote. And the value of those two fighters are quite different now. And I don't know, maybe it's a little bit contrived, maybe you could say, on Conor Benn's part, but I do think you have got to be a little bit like that. I quite liked it, and I think talking that way, he's talking a little bit mean and trash talking a little bit, but I think that gets people fired up, that sells. So I think there's a balance to be had. You can't overdo it. There's fighters over the years that have overdone it, but I don't know. I get what you're saying, but yeah, I think it was a very solid performance. And obviously he was calling out Josh Kelly again. Well, he's been calling for that fight for a while. And I must admit, when I first heard him calling out Josh Kelly, with his amateur, sort of pedigree and a lot more sort of, amateur boxing experience, I really didn't see that as a competitive fight, and probably a 90-10 in favor of Josh Kelly. Whereas now I'm probably thinking it's a little bit closer, maybe 60-40, 65-35, something like that. I think on balance, I still think Josh Kelly has probably got too much for him. But after Josh Kelly's flat performance against Ray Robinson and that draw, and that last performance from Conor Benn, I actually think that brings them a little bit closer together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, is it Abanesian he's fighting?
Yeah, that's scheduled for January, and then they're looking at maybe doing that next summer, which I think would be a great fight.
Yeah.
I think they've got to get Conor Benn in there with somebody else. I think somebody like like a Samuel Vargas, or you're right. The welterweight division is stacked. It's one of the most competitive divisions. But I think there's some decent names in there that could put him in with, like a Samuel Vargas, who got beat by Khan a couple of years ago. Chris Algieri, somebody like that, or maybe I think John Molina Jr. is still doing the rounds. I think he's like 36, 37. That could be a fun fight if they can get him over from the US. I remember him fighting Provodnikov a few years ago, and it was an absolute war. I think that'd be an interesting clash of styles. But who'd you put him in there with next?
Don't know. He does need someone before he goes in with Kelly, but I don't know. It's someone that's the next level. Someone's a bit more of a threat. I mean, he was going on about, you've not seen the best of me. You see the best of me when I'm up against it, which was exactly what his dad's like.
Yeah.
His dad used to be, how many times was he looked like he was about to go, and then he'd throw a shot and the other guy would start wobbling. You know what I mean? It was just, that was it really. That's how he won his fights, really. Get hurt and then snap back.
Yeah.
So we need to see him under more. I mean, he has gone down a few times, but I don't think he's ever looked out of it. So I think he's got a relatively good chin. Has Kelly ever been down?
No. But his opposition has been pretty poor.
Yeah.
Pretty poor.
So I think there's still question marks about either's chin, and I don't think either are the biggest puncher. So it will be a good fight, and both are fast. Both are fast, but he's not been well either, Kelly. He's had problems with health and stuff, so it's a bit. Let's see what he looks like in this next fight. But it's definitely one coming. It's strange though, isn't it? Because like that fight and the one we were talking about earlier, where it was like a Babic Hrgovic or a Wardley Gorman.
Yeah,
these aren't pay-per-view fights.
No.
But they're probably expensive Saturday night fights.
Yeah.
And the way the world is at the moment, or the way some boxers see themselves, they'll be wanting pay-per-view money for some of these.
Yeah.
Maybe not the Wardley fight, but Babic Hrgovic might want it. And I definitely think Kelly and Ben will be saying that's pay-per-view. It just isn't because of the level.
Yeah, maybe. I really hope not. I really hope we don't go down this road of of pay-per-view for, you know, every month for fights. I just don't think. I mean, I still to this day don't think that Chisora Usyk was a worthy pay-per-view. I know people obviously bought it, and that obviously, you know, counters my argument. But I don't know. When I was growing up watching boxing, you know, pay-per-view, you know, the Holyfield, Lewis, and Tyson, you know, that for me, pay-per-view was always like the, you know, the pinnacle. And I just think when we're churning out, you know, Chisora and Usyk as a pay-per-view, but I know it's different now. You know, it is different.
It's heavyweight though. That's the thing. I mean, if Kelly and Ben were heavyweights, you could probably get away with it. You know, Dubois and Joyce was going to be pay-per-view.
Yeah, I know that.
And it probably would have done okay.
Yeah, in a strange way, I would have bought it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the problem is it has to be real good level if it's not heavyweight.
Yeah.
That's
all right. Cool. All right. So yeah, well, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe and share the videos if you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.